Hello, I'm Chad Swan-Badgero, the Artistic Director for Peppermint Creek Theater Company, and we are so thrilled to have you here tonight for the first event of our 2021 season, the original film, Hear Our Cry. Let me tell you briefly about how this show came about. We knew we didn't want to produce any shows this season that we would have to eventually cancel depending on how long the COVID-19 pandemic stretched. So we set about brainstorming what types of events we could create that would stay true to our mission of creating dialogue and addressing current issues in our society. Peppermint Creek has a long history of highlighting and lifting up the diverse voices of populations both in our state and around the globe. The production you're about to see this evening is a strong and dynamic example of what can happen when you collaborate and invite broad and diverse partners into the creation process. We began by putting a public call out to the Lansing community for suggestions of established texts from American history. We asked the community to consider a wide range of diverse American voices. We were thrilled at our community's response and chose 7 pieces from those suggestions for tonight's production. We then began building relationships and reaching out to authors from Lansing and across the United States. We asked those authors to choose one of the established texts from the community's suggestions to use as a springboard for writing their own response. With little guidance other than create a written piece in your own voice, we have been overwhelmed by the creativity, authenticity, truth, pain, and joy we received from these authors. Tonight, you will also hear their voices spotlighted. Lastly, we began reaching out to diverse individuals, some who we've worked with in the past and some completely new to us, to recite and perform these 12 pieces for you on the screen. And that's what you'll see tonight: an emphasis on text, diverse voices, joy and pain, and gut responses from individuals throughout our country and throughout our history, reflecting on their experiences and what it means to be an American. As a theater company, continually striving to reflect our shared experiences, asking audiences to question the world we live in, and tackling the most current issues of the day, we couldn't be more proud of how this production tonight supports and reflects our mission. We continue to learn more about how we as a company can continue to be inclusive and diversify the voices that decide what we program, and ask more of ourselves as a company and more of you as an audience when it comes to issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We hope that after being immersed in the eloquent voices featured for you this evening, that you'll leave with questions for yourself, talking to those you came with, and perhaps challenging your perceptions of how America does or does not celebrate our diversity. And as always, if you have ideas of how we can more fully live into our mission, please reach out to us. We want to hear from you. You'll find the full thank you list at the end of tonight's film, but I must thank Kathleen, Egan, and Ben Cassidy for being so integral in the creation of tonight's film. What a joy it is to work with such creative and passionate individuals. Thank you both. Thanks also to our sponsor of tonight's film, Joan and Jerry Matson. You two are amazing. All of our events this season are free for the public, but we encourage you, if you are moved by tonight's performance or believe in Peppermint Creek's mission, to donate to the theater in whatever way makes sense for you. Donations, both large and small, allow us to continue to serve you as a Lansing community. And now with a virtual platform, the world. You can donate at our website, peppermintcreek.org. And on our website, we encourage you to check out the remaining 3 events that we've got scheduled for this season. We hope you'll be as excited as we are about what's to come. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and this season. Please enjoy tonight's film, Hear Our Cry.
My name is Harvey Milk, and I'm here to recruit you. I've been saying this one for years. It's a political joke. I can't help it. I have to tell it. I've never been able to talk to this many political people before, so if I tell you nothing else, you may be able to go home laughing a bit. About 6 months ago, Anita Bryant, in her Speaking to God, said the drought in California was because of the gay people. On November 9th, the day after I got elected, it started to rain. On the day I got sworn in, we walked to City Hall, and it was kind of nice. And as soon as I said the word "I do," it started to rain again. It's been raining since then. And the people of San Francisco figured the only way to stop it is to do a recall petition. That's the local joke. So much for that. Why are we here? Why are gay people here? And what's happening? What's happening to me is the antithesis of what you read about in the papers and what you hear about on the radio. You hear about and you read about this movement to the right, that we must band together and fight this movement to the right. And I'm here to go ahead and say that what you hear and read is what they want you to think. Unless you have a dialogue, unless you open the walls of dialogue, you can never change people's opinion. I know we're pressed for time, so I'm going to cover just one more little point. That is to understand why it's important that gay people run for office and that gay people get elected. I know there are many people in this room who are gay and are running for Central Committee, and I encourage you. You see, there's a major difference, and it remains a vital difference, between a friend and a gay person, a friend in office and a gay person in office. Gay people have been slandered nationwide. We've been tarred, and we've been brushed with the picture of pornography. In Dade County, we were accused of child molestation. It is not enough anymore to just have friends represent us, no matter how good that friend may be. The time has come when the gay community must not be judged for our criminals and our myths. Like every other group, we must be judged by our leaders and those who are themselves gay, those who are visible. For invisible, we remain in limbo, a myth, a person with no parents, no brothers, no sisters, no friends who are straight, no important positions in employment. A gay person in office can set a tone, can command respect, not only from the larger community, but from the young people in our own community who need both examples and hope. The first gay people we elect must be strong. They must not be content to sit on the back of the bus. They must not be content to accept pablum. They must be above wheeling and dealing. They must be for the good of all of us, independent, unbought. The anger and frustrations that some of us feel is because we are misunderstood. And friends can't feel that anger and frustration. They can sense it in us, but they can't feel it because a friend has never gone through what is known as coming out. I will never forget what it was like coming out and having nobody to look up toward. I remember the lack of hope, and our friends can't fulfill it. I can't forget the looks on faces of people who have lost hope, be they gay, be they seniors, be they blacks looking for an almost impossible job, be they Latins trying to explain their problems and aspirations in a tongue that's foreign to them. I personally will never forget that people are more important than buildings. I use the word I because I am proud. I stand here tonight in front of my gay sisters and brothers and friends because I am proud of you. I think it's time that we have many legislators who are gay and proud of the fact and do not have to remain in the closet. I think a gay person up front will not walk away responsibility and be afraid of being tossed out of office. After Dade County, I walked among the angry and frustrated night after night, and I looked at their faces. And in San Francisco, 3 days before Gay Pride Day, a person was killed just because he was gay. And that night, I walked among the sad and frustrated at City Hall in San Francisco, and later that night, as they lit candles on Castro Street and stood in silence, reaching out for some symbolic thing that would give them hope. These were strong people whose faces I knew from the shop, the streets, meetings, and people who I never saw before, but I knew. They were strong, but even they needed hope. And the young gay people in Altoona, Pennsylvania's, and the Richmond, Minnesota's, who are coming out and hearing Nita Bryant on television and her story. The only thing they have to look forward to is hope. And you have to give them hope. Hope for a better world. Hope for a better tomorrow. Hope for a better place to come to if the pressures at home are too great. Hope that all will be all right. Without hope, not only are the gays, but the blacks, the seniors, and the handicapped, the us's will give up. And if you help elect more gay people, that gives the green light to all who feel disenfranchised. A green light to move up forward. It means hope to a nation that has given up. Because if a gay person makes it, the doors are open to everyone. So if there's a message I have to give, is that I found one overriding thing about my personal election. It's the fact that if a gay person can be elected, it's a green light. And you, and you, and you have to give people hope. Thank you very much.
This is for the kids who die, black and white, for the kids will die certainly, and the old and rich will live on a while, as always, eating blood and gold and letting kids die. Kids will die in the swamps of Mississippi organizing sharecroppers. Kids will die in the streets of Chicago organizing workers. Kids will die in the orange groves of California telling others to get together. Whites and Filipinos, Negroes, and Mexicans, all kinds of kids will die, who don't believe in lies and bribes and contentment and a lousy peace. Of course, the wise and the learned who pen editorials in the papers, and the gentlemen with doctor in front of their names, white and black, who make surveys and write books will live on weaving words to smother the kids who die. In the sleazy courts, and the bribe-reaching police, and the blood-loving generals, and the money-loving preachers will all raise their hands against the kids who die, beating them with laws and clubs and bayonets and bullets to frighten the people. For the kids who die are like iron in the blood of the people. And the old and rich don't want the people to taste the iron of the blood of the kids who die. Don't want the people to get wise to their own power, to believe in Angelo Herndon or even get together. Listen, kids who die. Maybe now there will be no monument for you except for in our hearts. Maybe your bodies will be lost in a swamp or a prison grave or the potter's field or the rivers where you drown like Leap Connect. But the day will come, you assure yourselves that it is coming, when the marching feet of the masses will rise for you in a living monument of love, joy, and laughter, in black hands and white hands clasped as one, in a song that reaches the sky, the song of the triumphant through the kids who die.
Mrs. Mongella, distinguished delegates and guests, I would like to thank the Secretary General of the United Nations for inviting me to be part of the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women. This is truly a celebration of the contributions women make in every aspect of life, in the home, on the job, in their communities, as mothers, wives, sisters, daughters, learners, workers, citizens, and leaders. It is also a coming together, much the way women come together every day in every country. We come together in fields and in factories, in village markets and supermarkets, in living rooms and boardrooms. Whether it is while playing with our children in the park or washing clothes in a river or taking a break at the office water cooler, we come together and talk about our aspirations and concerns. And time and again, our talk turns to our children and our families. However different we may be, there is far more that unites us than divides us. We share a common future, and we are here to find common ground so that we may help bring new dignity and respect to women and girls all over the world, and in so doing, bring new strength and stability to families as well. By gathering in Beijing, we are focusing world attention on issues that matter most in the lives of women and their families. Access to education, healthcare, jobs, and credit, the chance to enjoy basic legal and human rights, and participate fully in the political life of their countries. There are some who question the reason for this conference. Let them listen to the voices of women in their homes, neighborhoods, and workplaces. There are some who wonder whether the lives of women and girls matter to economic and political progress around the globe. Let them look at the women gathered here and at Wairo, the homemakers, nurses, teachers, lawyers, policymakers, and women who run their own businesses. What we are learning around the world is that if women are healthy and educated, their families will flourish. If women are free from violence, their families will flourish. And if women have a chance to work and earn as full and equal partners in society, their families will flourish. And when families flourish, communities and nations will flourish. That is why every woman, every man, every child, every family, and every nation on our planet has a stake in the discussion that takes place here. The great challenge of this conference is to give voice to women everywhere whose experiences go unnoticed, whose words go unheard. Women comprise more than half the world's population. Women are 70% of the world's poor and 2/3 of those who are not taught to read and write. We are the primary caretakers for most of the world's children and elderly, yet much of the work we do is not valued, not by economists, not by historians, not by popular culture, not by government leaders. At this very moment, as we sit here, women around the world are giving birth, raising children, cooking meals, washing clothes, cleaning houses, planting crops, working on assembly lines, running companies, and running countries. Women are also dying from diseases that should have been prevented or treated. They are watching their children succumb to malnutrition caused by poverty and economic deprivation. They are being denied the right to go to school by their own fathers and brothers. They are being forced into prostitution, and they are being barred from the ballot box and the bank lending office. Those of us who have the opportunity to be here have the responsibility to speak for those who could not. As an American, I want to speak up for women in my own country. Women who are raising children on the minimum wage. Women who can't afford health care or child care. Women whose lives are threatened by violence, including violence in their own homes. I want to speak up for mothers who are fighting for good schools, safe neighborhoods, clean air, and clean airwaves. For older women, some of them widows, who have raised their families and now find that their skills and life experiences are not valued in the workplace. For women who are working all night as nurses, hotel clerks, and fast food chefs so that they can be at home during the day with their kids. And for women everywhere who simply don't have time to do everything they are called upon to do each day. Speaking to you today, I speak for them, just as each of us speaks for women around the world who are denied the chance to go to school or see a doctor or own property or have a say about the direction of their lives simply because they are women. The truth is that most women around the world work, both inside and outside the home, usually by necessity. We need to understand that there is no one formula for how women should lead our lives. That is why we must respect the choices that each woman makes for herself and her family. Every woman deserves the chance to realize her own God-given potential. We also must recognize that women will never gain full dignity until their human rights are respected and protected. No one should be forced to remain silent for fear of religious or political persecution, arrest, abuse, or torture. Tragically, women are most often the ones whose human rights are violated. Even in the late 20th century, the rape of women continues to be used as an instrument of armed conflict. Women and children make up a large majority of the world's refugees. And when women are excluded from the political process, they become even more vulnerable to abuse. I believe, on the eve of a new millennium, it is time to break the silence. It is time for us to say here in Beijing and for the world to hear that it is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights. These abuses have continued because for too long, the history of women has been a history of silence. Even today, there are those who are trying to silence our words. The voices of this conference and of the women at YRO must be heard loud and clear. It is a violation of human rights when babies are denied food or drowned or suffocated or their spines broken simply because they were born girls. It is a violation of human rights when women and girls are sold into the slavery of prostitution. It is a violation of human rights when women are doused with gasoline, set on fire, and burned to death because their marriage dowries are deemed too small. It is a violation of human rights when individual women are raped in their own communities and when thousands of women are subjected to rape as a tactic or prize of war. It is a violation of human rights when a leading cause of death worldwide among women ages 14 to 44 is the violence they are subjected to in their own homes. It is a violation of human rights when young girls are brutalized by the painful and degrading practice of genital mutilation. It is a violation of human rights when women are denied the right to plan their own families, and that includes being forced to have abortions or being sterilized against their will. If there is one message that echoes forth from this conference, let it be that human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights once and for all. Let me be clear. Freedom means the right of people to assemble, organize, and debate openly. It means respecting the views of those who may disagree with the views of their governments. It means not taking citizens away from their loved ones and jailing them, mistreating them, or denying them their freedom or dignity because of the peaceful expression of their ideas and opinions. In my country, we recently celebrated the 75th anniversary of women's suffrage. It took 150 years after the signing of our Declaration of Independence for women to win the right to vote. It took 72 years of organized struggle on the part of many courageous women and men. It was one of America's most divisive philosophical wars, but it was also a bloodless war. Suffrage was achieved without a shot fired. We have also been reminded in VJ Day observances last weekend of the good that comes when men and women join together to combat the forces of tyranny and build a better world. We have seen peace prevail in most places for a half-century. We have avoided another world war. But we have not solved older, deeply rooted problems that continue to diminish the potential of half the world's population. Now it is time to act on behalf of women everywhere. If we take bold steps to better the lives of women, we will be taking bold steps to better the lives of children and families too. Families rely on mothers and wives for emotional support and care. Families rely on women for labor in the home, and increasingly families rely on women for income needed to raise healthy children and care for other relatives. As long as discrimination and inequities remain so commonplace around the world, as long as girls and women are valued less, fed last, overworked, underpaid, not schooled, and subjected to violence in and out of their homes, the potential of the human family to create a peaceful, prosperous world will not be realized. Let this conference be our and the world's call to action, and let us heed the call so that we can create a world in which every woman is treated with respect and dignity. Every boy and girl is loved and cared for equally, and every family has the hope of a strong and stable future. God's blessings on you, your work, and all who will benefit from it. Thank you very much.
Suddenly, one day we come to a huge river. The people cry, remembering the Ohio. A soldier tells us it's the Mississippi River. We will cross it into Missouri. We camp under the cover of brush and watch ice chunks float by the green ferry's landing. The earth and sky are ghost white in the frozen air. Many more die waiting for the ice to pass. The bluff across the river is where the earth steps up to the sky world. I feel the fear of the river grow. How can we cross that river? We'll die. We'll drown like the others. My father doesn't say anything. His hair has grayed, his eyes are dull and hollowed in his head. Look at it. It's a spirit river. I watch the ice pass for a few more days. Then one morning I wake to the taste of peaches in my mouth. I hear the soldiers preparing to cross the river. We always have been toward the front of the line. We'll be among the first to go today. My heart pounds wildly. I hold something in my hands, but always there's nothing there, it's empty. The bear camps before me as usual. I try to push him away, but he doesn't move. I feel the stirring of his breath. Old bear, I cry to him. Today, we cross the river. I pat his hide. Move over. I go, even if it's to the afterlife with mother and the baby. I feel the tightness in my chest. My arms hurt. Surely the land and the trail we walk will fold under the earth with the sun. I hear the moaning of the trees for us. Above us, the clouds where my grandmother's bone-carved hairpins. Grandmother, I call. She smiles. Her face is now gray and lovely above the wind that snarls upriver. I see the spirits eating from my feathered-edged dishes. I hear them in the wind. They put down their knives and forks. They come and held the sides of the tossing raft as we step onto it. Some of us falling, others crying out. The spirits wear bright tunics and turbans. I can't see above them as we cross the river. They hold the raft steadily as it jerks between large pieces of ice. I spoon more cornbread to feed them. More squirrel meat, more peach cobbler. I cooked it just this morning in my dream. Hold on, hold on. I hear them say as we cross the river. Their ghost voices laughing into the freezing wind.
And so Anthony unmutes himself and just starts burping into the computer like he has a symphony of Fago rising up out of him.
Not a symphony. I can't.
No. I cannot with this virtual teaching, Lauren. I keep muting him, and Anthony somehow hacks the system, makes himself an administrative host, and starts burping all through my lesson.
Oh my God. I miss Antonio.
Oh.
Having him last year, as much as he interrupted my class, the kid was funny as shit. Your icon. What's up, babe?
I'm trying to find my phone. My mother said she would call with her lab results at 4:30, and now it's about to hit 5. And I can't even find my phone to call the hospital.
Hi, Jamel.
Oh, shit. I didn't know you were in the
Oh no, this is our vent and veg time. It's just me and Keith for the next 45 seconds or so before after school club committee meets. I'll yell when it rains, baby. Thanks. Okay. I'm gonna go take a shower, try to relax.
Let me ask you something. In all the 10 years you've been with Jamel, how come you ain't hooked me up with one of her cute straight friends yet? Or bi, I don't discriminate.
Shut up. Get your own dating pool. You always want somebody to hook you up. It's the rest of the committee waiting to be admitted.
Okay.
Let me get this background on here.
Oh, Lord. Here you go with this Martha Stewart background.
I don't need everyone in my life like that, especially them. See you in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Lord.
Thanks for being on time, everyone. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hey. Hello, fellow inmates. Get it? Because, you know, we're all in different cells. Yeah, the kids didn't laugh today either. Never mind.
Hello, team. Thank you, everyone, for meeting. It's dinner time, so let's decide the virtual after-school clubs and get off this call.
That sounds great. My husband and kids would love to have me at the table for once.
Winona, you were on student surveys?
Yeah, so top choices were gymnastics. I mean, virtual gymnastics. Are these kids dumb? How is that even gonna work?
Won't. You need a physical coach.
Oh, I can totally see how it could work virtually.
Let's just get through the entire list before we give commentary, or this is going to take twice as long.
Are you in a hurry? Must have a hot chocolate boyfriend waiting for you, huh?
Lists, Winona?
Fine. So it's gymnastics, coding, chess, hair braiding club, music, book club, and something called QSA.
It stands for Queer Student Alliance.
All right, that makes sense. That was a write-in, a request from our special kid.
We are not calling him the special kid. His name is Antonio.
So you knew who I was talking about. Like I said, special.
You can say gay. And my husband's friend has a gay son. It's not a big deal.
I don't know. I mean, we were talking about 6th graders. It seems a little early for a gay club.
It's a supportive group, Megan, not a gay club. I mean, you don't have to be 21 to get in.
Kids are impressionable. I don't know. Should our 6th graders even be talking about sex? I mean, isn't that like grooming?
I never thought of that.
Because it's a reach.
They're already talking about sex. Don't you remember the filth that was written all over the bathroom walls? I mean, it's like poorly spelled erotica.
I'm just saying, we should be careful not to put ideas into their heads. Just let kids be kids.
Kids can be gay, Megan.
Keith, you're so right. And we really should be all following his lead.
Well, thank you, Brenna.
Antonio has had some mental health scares. I think it's important we as a school support him with this QSA. If Antonio requested it, we aren't introducing or promoting anything to him.
I agree. Let's move on to the next step. Now, we need somebody to be the advisor, Lauren.
It's obviously going to be you, Keith, isn't it?
Why, obviously?
Come on, Keith, don't be shy. You direct the school play, you dress well.
Oh, but I'm not.
Oh my God. This was not to embarrass you, Keith. I'm an ally. I just figured handsome, single African-American man meets successful single African-American woman, that you and Lauren haven't become the Obamas was clue number one. Then I realized that you and Lauren have like a fag hag situation. Can I say that?
No.
I wouldn't know.
I would be the advisor, but I just figured having a strong African-American gay man advisor would be powerful to our double minority students.
I'm not gay. I'm not.
Keith, I am so sorry for assuming. My husband says I need a filter.
Listen, I don't mind helping, okay? I just think it should be advised by someone who is actually gay, who can get to the heart of the issues and really be able to understand what these kids are going through. I'm a cis, straight man. They need their own role model.
You aren't gay, then we don't have any gay staff.
How do you know?
I'm a little bi-curious. I mean, Ruby Rose. I mean, don't tell my husband, but anyone would have a crush on her.
I am never going to be alone in the bathroom with you again.
What do bathrooms have to do with anything?
erotic fiction.
Weird to think of another woman that might be looking at me, like.
Back to the QSA.
Oh, shoot, I'll be the advisor. I might as well. I'm single, I got cats. I'm about as close to a lesbian as we got in this school.
This is supposed to be about Antonio.
That must be Lauren's hot chocolate date calling. We better wrap this meeting up.
Listen, Lauren already has a bond with Antonio, okay? He was her student last year. She should supervise this queer student alliance.
I don't think we should use the word queer. It's really ugly.
No, it isn't.
What if we call it like the Rainbow Club or the Peace Club? I feel like that sounds less scary.
Queer is not scary. The word queer is like empowering or whatever, like the N-word.
No, not like the N-word.
Let's not make this racial.
I only meant...
Is there a naked lady walking around at your place?
Baby, I thought you were gonna yell for me when you called.
I'm sorry, baby. It's just that the meeting...
You mute. You're not muted, Lauren.
It's fine, Lauren. Hello? Hi, Dr. Jenkins. Is she okay?
Baby?
What does that mean?
Don't cry, baby.
I'm her power of attorney. No, I can head to the hospital right now. My wife can drive me. 10 minutes. Yes, we're on our way.
Don't cry. Don't cry. I love you, baby. She's gonna be fine. Come on, put on clothes and I'll meet you in the car. I have a family. I have an emergency. I need to go.
Everything okay with your sister-in-law, Lauren?
Obviously, from the sound of the conversation, that is not her sister's.
You could hear me? Who unmuted me? I'm the administrator. Only I can unmute me.
You never turned on mute. You only turned your camera off.
I need to go. Email me whatever you come up with.
Well, I'm definitely putting Lauren down as QSA advisor. Think we can all agree?
Works for me. Should we move on to gymnastics?
Sure.
Valentine's Day in Detroit Public Schools fell on Count Day this year, which means all 187 of my students have to be present in class all day to convince the state that we need book money and pencil money and new teacher money. Rest assured, my students could care less about Count Day. They care that Valentine's Day is canceled, their pink carnations and puppy love put aside. Black kids deserve joy, unspeakable, and yet here we are. Them in their uniforms, marching in the building single file. Security wand checked their bodies, searched their gifts. They clutched like a bloom of daisies. The usual. On Valentine's Day in Florida, a white man shot up a school, murdered 14 students, 2 teachers, 1 coach, but we know that by now. My eyes are glued to my phone between taking attendance, anxiety, a colony of fire ants as I watch the news. The irony is, the lesson that day was on graveyard love. So we read Toni Morrison, talked 90s R&B, and Black love as a burial site. Already, newscasters are lauding us as heroes, saying, what an honor it is to die in the line of duty. The irony is people stay wanting Black women to keep everyone alive at our own expense. I want nothing more than to pull my own kids from their schools, take them home, and cuddle until the world forgets what they want from me. But I am teaching. I am always teaching. I don't leave my house without a stack of papers I can grade, just in case. I talk to my husband about my students. Like every conversation will build a room for them in our home. I am an exhausted, my mama used to warn me about, when I demanded that she get some rest. And I know this is not what it should mean to be married to a teacher. We don't even do a Valentine's date night. The next day, we have an active shooter drill. I remember the teacher from Florida died following the drill to the letter. And I'm almost a shrieking tower. When they ask why we have to practice how not to get killed, when we are a Detroit factory stuffed with Black and brown bodies, when our bus stops and gas stations and blocks are more likely to be shot up than our school, I tell them, my mama taught me that bullets ain't got no name. I learned early to get down and away from anything that might shatter. I tell them to follow whatever protocol their mama taught them for New Year's or 4th of July or the first real hot day in a Detroit summer. I tell them Valentine's Day is officially on the list. I turn the lights off, bolt the door, stand guard over the kids stacked like a game of Jenga, waiting to topple in the corner. Wonder what it means that I am teaching here, still too in love with a graveyard to leave.
Whereas the United States joins together each May to pay tribute to the contributions of generations of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders who have enriched the history of the United States. Whereas the history of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the United States is inextricably tied to the story of the United States. Whereas the Asian American and Pacific Islander community is an inherently diverse population comprised of over 45 distinct ethnicities and over 100 language dialects. Whereas, according to the United States Census Bureau, the Asian American population grew faster than any other racial or ethnic group over the last decade, surging nearly 46% between 2000 and 2010, a growth rate 4 times faster than the total United States population. Whereas the 2010 decennial census estimated that there are now approximately 17,300,000 residents of the United States who identify as Asian, and approximately 1,200,000 residents of the United States who identify themselves as Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, making up nearly 6% of the total United States population. Whereas the month of May was selected for Asian Pacific American Heritage Month because the first Japanese immigrants arrived in the United States on May 7, 1843, and the first transcontinental railroad was completed on May 10, 1869, with substantial contributions from Chinese immigrants. Whereas Section 102 of Title 36 United States Code officially designates May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month and requests the President to issue an annual proclamation calling on the people of the United States to observe the month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Whereas the year 2015 marks several important milestones for the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, including the 50th anniversary of the passage of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, landmark legislation that reversed restrictive immigration policies against immigrants from Asia, the 40th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, the 40th anniversary of the Southeast Asian diasporic communities in the United States, the 30th anniversary of Ellison Shoji Onizuka's space mission aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery, becoming the first Asian American in space, and the 25th anniversary of the enactment of legislation designating May to be Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, signed by President George H.W. Bush. Whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders such as Daniel K. Inouye, a Medal of Honor and Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient who is President pro tempore of the Senate, was the highest ranking Asian American government official in United States history. Dalip Singh Sound, the first Asian American congressman, Patsy T. Mink, the first woman of color and Asian American woman to be elected to Congress, Daniel K. Akaka, the first senator of Native Hawaiian ancestry, Hiram L. Fong, the first Asian American senator, Norman Y. Mineta, the first Asian American member of a presidential cabinet, and others have made significant contributions in both our government and military. Whereas the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, a bicameral caucus of members of Congress advocating on behalf of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, is composed of 48 members this year, including 13 members of Asian or Pacific Islander descent. Whereas in 2015, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are serving in state and territorial legislatures across the United States in record numbers, including in the states of Alaska, Arizona, California, Connecticut, Colorado, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, and the territories of American Samoa, Guam, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Whereas the number of Asian American and Pacific Islander Article III judges more than tripled between 2009 and 2015, reflecting a commitment to diversity in the federal judiciary that has resulted in the confirmation of high-caliber Asian American and Pacific Islander judicial nominees. Whereas there remains much to be done to ensure that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have access to resources and a voice in the government of the United States and continue to advance in the political landscape of the United States. And whereas celebrating Asian Pacific American Heritage Month provides the people of the United States with an opportunity to recognize the achievements, contributions, history, and to understand the challenges faced by Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the House of Representatives recognizes the significance of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month as an important time to celebrate the significant contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders to the history of the United States, and recognizes that Asian American and Pacific Islander communities enhance the rich diversity of and strengthen the United States.
Brother, Kuya. I've been tasked to write something for Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I tried writing a poem, I tried writing a story, I tried writing a speech, but none of those things came together the way I wanted. So I scrapped those projects, and instead, I'm writing this letter to you, Kuya. This is a letter about our heritage. I realize as I continue writing this that I feel good writing this. I want to write this. In fact, I think this is something I've needed to write for a long time now. It's something that I think about often. It's something that you and I spend hours on the phone talking about. These questions, how did we get here? What is our heritage? For our white friends in Michigan, our heritage was always about lumpia. Everything good about our Asianness was wrapped up in this one crunchy Filipino snack. There were two types of lumpia Mom would make. Shanghai, which was made with pork, carrot, garlic, and onion, and vegetable lumpia, made with cabbage, green beans, bean sprouts, carrot, garlic, and green onion. These fillings were wrapped in a thin paper made of flour, water, salt, and cornstarch, and fried in peanut oil. The Filipinos we knew loved lumpia, but the white kids we knew lost their minds over it. Is your mom gonna make lumpia? Our white friends would ask us with crazy eyes after they heard mom was bringing food to a high school play dress rehearsal. And she did always bring lumpia. The kids would gallop towards her with their paper plates, grabbing multiple pieces from her tinfoil container and slathering them with La Choy sweet and sour sauce. We liked lumpia before, but we liked it even better now, watching our white friends appreciate it as much as we did. We identified with lumpia. It was, we thought, the part of our Filipino culture that wasn't embarrassing. Sometimes our friends would call us lumpia. Hey, lumpia, they'd say. And we didn't mind. We took it as a compliment. It made us feel likable. You went to high school and I went to middle school and high school in DeWitt, Michigan, a small, mostly white city just outside of Lansing. We'd moved to DeWitt from a military base in Germany. DeWitt was a small town with a population of no more than 4,000. There was one stoplight in the downtown area, which wasn't very much of a downtown. There were lots of fields, back roads, and clean new subdivisions. When we first moved there, you were 14. I was 11. And you commented on the name of our new city, DeWitt, a Dutch surname meaning white. And indeed it was, and continues to be, mostly white. According to the Michigan Department of Education, between 2018 and 2019, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders made up 1.41% of those who attended DeWitt public schools, and white kids made up 84%. When we went to school from 1999 to 2006, this was even less diverse. This was a huge difference from our school on the military base in Stuttgart, Germany, which in 2008 was 61% white. I'm not sure of what the demographics were when we lived there in the 90s, but 61% sounds pretty consistent with my memory of the place. Unsurprisingly, we had trouble making friends in DeWitt, Michigan. In addition to being two Asian kids in a small town, you and I were both stout, pimply, and unfashionable, particularly to the standards of our athletic Abercrombie and Fitch counterparts. We were so confused by our surroundings, and we weren't sure how to conform. We had come to the US expecting to be in schools that resembled the ones in Boy Meets World or Clueless. But my middle school and your high school was one of the rural suburban variety that we'd never seen on television. There were kids who listened to Backstreet Boys and Offspring, but there were also kids who were really into Faith Hill and Kenny Chesney, who cared a lot about fire pits, four-wheelers, and football. We expected everyone to sound like Valley Girls or New Yorkers, but most of the kids spoke with a nasally A and O vowel sound, pronouncing mom like mom and rap like rap. This was not what we expected America to be like. Recently, you reminded me of the time we saw a dead beaver on the side of the road. We hadn't seen roadkill much at all, if any. We were so sheltered in our little military base life in clean Germany. On the base, we'd explore our tidy streets and never saw a dead anything. It was idyllic. Then, in Michigan, we saw death in the open eyes of this bloated beaver crawling with maggots. You and I went to go grab a stick to go poke at it until this car stopped and told us, "Stop doing that, kids, you'll get sick." You say now that person in the car probably thought, "These foreigners, what the hell were they thinking?" We don't know if she actually thought this. She could have been just trying to protect us. We have no idea how strange or foreign we seemed to her, and she had no idea how strange and foreign we felt. At our school, we constantly had to explain ourselves. Where are you from? We moved here from Germany. Are you German? No, our parents are from the Philippines, and my dad is ethnically Chinese. Do you speak German? No, we lived on an American military base. Do you speak Chinese? No, our dad grew up in the Philippines. Do you speak whatever the language they speak in the Philippines? Philippines? Not really. We understand Tagalog and Bisaya, but we don't really speak it. After conversations like this, kids at school would slowly back away from us. It was too much for them to understand, and it was too much for us to explain. It was baffling, and the complexity of our answer to the question, where are you from, drew people away from us instead of towards us. There was a redheaded girl, Emily. She was a new kid too when we first moved here. When people asked her where she was from, she'd say, Texas. And people loved to talk to her about Texas. Texas was simple. Texas was neat, interesting. I thought, why couldn't we have been from Texas? That first year, I asked you what I should do to meet people, to make friends. People either looked at us with suspicion or avoided eye contact entirely. I was lonely. You were always better at making friends than I was. You were always better at everything. 3 years older than me and so much smarter than I would ever be. You said, I just make people laugh. How? I asked. I make fun of myself. If someone called me fat, I jiggle my belly. If someone asked me if I know Chinese, I pretend to speak Chinese, and they laugh. I remember you told me sometimes you call yourself a racial slur to get people to feel comfortable with you, to acknowledge that you too were aware of your difference, and you too hated yourself for it. I did hate myself for my difference during this period, especially between 6th and 9th grade. I felt awkward and ugly. I had big round glasses and a mouth full of metal. I had flabby cheeks and long, stringy, dandruffy hair. Plus, all the things I still hate about myself now. My wide nose and my bony hands. I remember I did have one friend in 7th grade though. Hannah. Hannah was blonde and fair-skinned. She took me to one of my first football games. During the game, she asked every boy there who they thought was prettier, her or me. Every single boy said she was prettier. Most of them saying Asian girls were ugly. I tried to laugh it off at the time. Like you said, to agree with them, to insult myself first, to claim the insult as my own, so it wouldn't touch me. I said, yes, of course. She's prettier than me. I'm so ugly. When her father picked us up from the game, she told him what all the boys said, and he agreed with her that she was beautiful. Then he said something generic to me about how looks don't matter. When I arrived home, my parents were already asleep, but I shook them awake, and I wept in my mother's arms. They were angry at Hannah for me. They told me I wasn't ugly, but it was hard to believe them. I rarely believed anything that our parents said anymore. They were of a different time and place. You say now that there wasn't an alternative, that we were lonely. You even said once, what was the alternative? To be proud of our Asian heritage? In that school? Yes, people would have pushed us away even more. It was required that we made fun of ourselves, that we showed our friends that we were cool with it. And look at us now. Is this our Asian American Pacific Islander heritage, one of ambivalence, self-hatred, self-denial? Perhaps the alternative was that we would have been friendless, but we would have kept some part of ourselves intact. I remember the one other Asian girl in my grade, Akiho. I wonder what she's up to now. She was tough, and I admired her for it. She never spoke. I only ever heard her speak once. It was in 6th grade health class. She was asked what to do if someone offered her drugs, and she said, "Just say no." I was stunned. The whole class's jaws dropped in unison. That was the only time we'd ever heard her voice. Akiho had lice once before I moved there, probably in 5th grade. And when I arrived, everyone called me Akiho. People asked me if I had lice, and I had no idea why until I found out that Akiho had lice. It was as if they thought lice were a distinctly Asian problem and not something that children would get sometimes from one another. You asked, what was the alternative? Akiho was the alternative. To be strong, angry, and friendless. I wish she were friendlier, though. I would have been her friend. I remember I tried to talk to her sometimes. She'd never responded, which made me feel even more isolated. But at least she kept something of herself. She didn't destroy herself in the way that we did. And we did end up making friends. Some of them really good friends, actually. How? We acted in plays. We were lucky to go to a school that did 5 plays a year. It is not an exaggeration to say that theater literally saved our lives. Theater saved a lot of lives. It was where the queer, people of color, nerdy weirdos in our school found their people. Certainly there were never any Asian roles for us. But being Asian and playing white roles made us feel like Asian people could be like white people sometimes, could blend into white families, white communities with no problem at all. They could fit in as a French prison guard and a police officer in 18th century France. They could fit in as a German whore in pre-World War II Germany. They could fit in as a reverend who hates dancing in a town where dancing and rock and roll is banned. They could fit in as the sister and daughter of white people in a Sam Shepard play. None of these characters needed to explain themselves. It wasn't acknowledged in the play that they were Asian. It wasn't in the script. They just were. We were accepted into plays. We didn't have to justify ourselves why we were there. We were there because we were good enough to be there. We were there to quite literally fulfill a role. And you're still an actor now. You play some roles that require an Asian actor, but you play other roles that could be filled by actors of various races. And I wonder how you feel inside the body of an Asian character. Does it feel natural to be there? Or do you feel like we always felt a constant desire to be someone else? In November 2016, when Donald Trump was elected president, there were multiple reports of white children in DeWitt Junior High School linking arms and forming a wall to block minority students from getting to where they needed to go. A Latina student was stopped from going to her locker. An Asian student was told that she should be deported. The school did not explain what disciplinary actions they were taking against the student who did this. I posted about this on social media, and someone wrote something about how the parents should be the ones held responsible. It is true that children learn things from adults, and perhaps the kids should not be blamed for their actions. Nonetheless, I know firsthand how feelings of outsiderness can resound throughout people's lives, even after things change in a person's life. Those feelings can remain. We never celebrated Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month in our high school. It would have been hilarious if we did, considering there was no more than 5 of us there. But as I write this letter, I think It might have made a difference if our schools celebrated all of the history, heritage, awareness, and pride months. I asked Mom about her experience with Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. She worked for the federal government at a military entrance processing station in South Lansing. And at the end of every April, she'd get an email reminding her that it was time to celebrate it. She was the only Asian or Pacific Islander at her job, but they celebrated it anyways. She did all the work for it. She put up posters of different Asian cultures, and one day in May, they had a celebration. She'd invite Asian speakers and dancers. She made food, adobo, pancit, and lumpia, and her coworkers ate and loved it. It was a lot of work for her to do this, but when she talked to me about it, she was laughing. She was proud of it. I asked her how it felt to share her culture in that way, and she said, "It made me feel good." I wonder what it would have done for the white kids in my school, for the white teachers, administration. I wonder what it would have done for us, the Asian kids, how we might have felt different because of it. If they had invited our parents to make food, dance, explain who we were, if there had been a designated period of celebration, appreciation, and then if we could have watched the people, our peers, appreciate it all in the way that we saw them eating and enjoying lumpia, it certainly would not have fixed the outsiderness that we felt or the racism of some of the students at our school. But if we had had this, I wonder, would you and I have been given the permission to love more about who we are and where we came from? And I'm a writer now. Some people call me a Filipino writer. I wrote a book about our family's immigration from the Philippines. And I think about our middle school and high school experiences a lot because I'm often baffled by my obsession with our family and our culture and by the disconnection I feel from it. You and I talk about it endlessly, so I know you're obsessed with it too. I sometimes feel like I'm an imposter writing about being Filipino because for that period in our lives, middle school and high school, I pushed myself away from it as much as I could. You asked me, what was the alternative? To be proud of our Asian heritage? Perhaps that alternative was there, but we felt like we couldn't do it by ourselves. It would have made us feel too vulnerable. I'm not sure how it would have changed us to celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, but I think it could have helped if, just for a month, or even a day, our school, our community, had said, "We see you. Here, go celebrate."
In the march from Delano to Sacramento, there is a meeting of cultures and traditions. The centuries-old religious tradition of Spanish culture conjoins with a very contemporary cultural syndrome of demonstration, springing from the spontaneity of the poor, the downtrodden, the rejected, the discriminated against, bearing visibly the need and demand for equality and freedom. Through every religious-oriented culture, pilgrimage has had a place. A trip made with sacrifice and hardships, as an expression of commitment and penance, and often involving a petition to the patron of the pilgrimage for some sincerely sought benefit of body or soul. Pilgrimage has not passed Mexican culture. Daily, in every shrine of the country, and in particular in the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe, arrive pilgrims of all places, many of whom have long since walked out the pieces of rubber tire that served them as swords, and many of whom will walk on their knees the last mile or so of the pilgrimage. Many of the Delano pilgrims will have walked similar pilgrimages in their lives, some of them as small children even, clinging to the memory of the day-long marches, the camps at night, the streams forded, the hills climbed, the sacral aura of the sanctuary, and the fiesta that followed. But throughout the Spanish-speaking world, there is another tradition that touches on the present march. That of the Lenten penitential processions, where penitents march through the streets, often dressed in sackcloth and ashes, and even carrying crosses as a sign of penance and as a plea for the mercy of God. The penitential processions run in the Mexican-American blood, and Delano will therefore be a march of penance. Public penance for the sins of the strikers, their own, and for yielding, perhaps, to feelings of hatred and revenge in the strike itself. They hope by marching to make themselves at peace with God and make the justice of their cause purified of any lesser motivation. These two great cultures of great people meet in the Mexican-American, who believes Delano is his cause for justice, freedom, and respect from a predominantly foreign community in a land where he was first. The Mexican revolutions were primarily uprisings of the poor fighting for bread and dignity. And the Mexican-American is also a child of the revolution. Pilgrimage, penance, and revolution. The march from Delano to Sacramento has strong religious and cultural overtones, but it is also the march of a minority that has suffered in a hostile environment, and a minority who means business.
Good afternoon. My name is Henrietta Lax. I was born in Virginia, Roanoke, Virginia, on a tobacco farm. It was hot that day, the first day of August 1920. About the same time the asters and black-eyed Susans and sunflowers make a big show. See that bed over there? That's where I took my first breath. Laying up there with my mama, safe in her arms. Black-eyed Susan, sweet as I could be. They say I came out perfect. Not a mark on me. Said I was the only one that would come out that way. That's right. See that hospital bed? Great iron bed? One in the corner? That hospital bed was my home. Doctors, nurses, all in white. They found this knot in me. A big tumor, shiny, bright, the size of a newborn baby's fist. They didn't ask me. They just kept it. Took little pieces of it and gave them away. I never knew a thing about it. But you all know. You know the story. I just heard about it from you. I was sick. Sick as a dog. Had a cancer. With a mind of its own. I fought it, and I fought it hard. So weak. Seemed like nothing, water, food, none of it made a difference. Just kept drying up. October 4th, 1951. the day I passed. The tobacco was ready. Leaves turned yellow with brown sugar spots. Big beds of asters showing their stuff. I left 5 babies. Sweet little children. They kept my tumor. It made a big harvest out of a crop of my cells, looking for a cure. No one asked me. No one called me by name, invited me to tea in their high-toned homes. Now, don't get me wrong. Those doctors operated on me, big, fancy hospitals. They tried to save me, but they couldn't do it. That tumor had a mind of its own. So they started growing me in a lab to see how far I could go. I never knew a thing about it. You all know the story. I heard about it from you. Now, until I came along, any cell they tried to grow, those little cells, little baby things, they died after a day or two, just like that. How far can you dream? Can you see millions? No. Billions? No. Trillions of itty-bitty cells, growing them in a lab, looking for a cure, making money right and left off my cells. And I didn't get a penny. Not one penny. Dividing and dividing and dividing. Soon as one died, another one took their place. Dividing and dividing and dividing. Lord have mercy. You ever listen to Mysteries? Those shows on the radios? Well, to this day, they don't know. That's right. Still a mystery. How come Henrietta Lacks cells keep dividing? Nobody knows. Henrietta Lacks. Call me healer. Call me the cure. Call me polio. Call me HIV, measles, mumps, Ebola, HPV. I'm the cure. Call me Henrietta Lacks. Healer. Healer. Say it over again and again. Healer. Quiet now. Healer. Try it again and again and again. If you want to know the truth about polio or AIDS or cancer, call me. Call me by my name.
In the night, they shriek and moan. In the dark, the tall pine trees moan as they guard the dismal trail. The Cherokees say it is the groan, every shriek and echoed groan of their forefathers that fell with broken hopes and bitter fears on that weary trail of tears. Broken hopes and broken hearts, a quivering mass of broken hearts, were driven over the trail, stifling back the groan that starts, smothering back the moan that full 4,000 fell. But still the Great Spirit, his people, as they travel over the trail of tears. From the homes their fathers made, from the graves the tall trees shade, for the sake of greed and gold. The Cherokees were forced to go to a land they did not know. And Father Time, or wisdom old, cannot erase through endless years the memory of the Trail of Tears.
Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here, at our sea-washed sunset gates, shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse from your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.